Hi, good afternoon, girls. I want to talk this afternoon about the 1994 genocide in Rwanda in Africa, which is obviously the theme of the first part of your assessment, where you'll be looking at, ostensibly at the question as to pretty much what the United Nations or the world community did in this genocide. And obviously the answer, we've seen Hutu Rwanda, we've had some good class discussions, that the answer generally is that the UN did nothing, the world community did nothing, and think in the sources, because you're going to be looking at sources, that this theme of failure is a recurring theme, that there's a lot of people with a lot of guilt and a lot of shame, and if you want, like, blood on their hands for not having done what they should have done. So let's just go back to a few of the key points. So pre-1994, Rwanda was obviously had been a part of the French and the Belgian Empire. After decolonisation, the Hutu tribes felt kind of, in many respects, they felt they weren't getting a fair crack of the whip or a fair go. The Tutsi were wealthier and were accustomed to being richer and had a more privileged life. And then when the moderate Hutu president's plane was shot down, that signified, if you like, a real chance for the Hutus to let rip on the Tutsis, and that's what they did for, remember, 100 days when they massacred in this genocide. And remember, that's basically, you call it an ethnic removal or a cleansing of a people based upon their ethnicity or the colour of their skin or their religion sometimes. We've seen it with the Jews in the Holocaust. So the Hutu rebels basically were this out-of-control militia. The army was kind of playing along with them as well, certainly offered no protection to the Tutsis. And men, women, children massacred literally where they stood with these machetes, which had been brought in cheap, like 1 cent a machete is what the Hutu warlords, the militia commanders, had paid the Chinese for these dodgy, cheap machetes, but they did the job very, very nasty. And we obviously watched the movie where Paul, a moderate Hutu, provides shelter and help and support to anyone pretty much, but obviously largely it's a Tutsi haven, the Hotel Mille Collines, which is the feature hotel in the movie. So beyond this 100 days, and we see a Canadian United Nations force, and they're not just Canadian, but the leader's Canadian. And remember, their hands are tied. They're not peacemakers, they're peacekeepers. If there is no peace to keep, they can't keep it. So we see the United Nations take some losses because some of the soldiers are killed. We see Christian churches, nuns, convents, brothers, we see massacred because these people are providing shelter to Tutsis. We see Hutus massacred because they're providing shelter to Tutsis. It's all in extremism, and if you're not extremist, then, you know, woe betide you. You might be the next victim of the machete-wielding militia. Remember, that militia all the time, they're being egged on by this propaganda. That's an important concept, an important word, girls. Propaganda that you're hearing on the Hutu Power Radio. That's a radio station across the country which are giving these messages. Like, now's the time to attack. We've got to do it now. These cockroaches. Remember, we've got Origin coming up. You know, the whole cockroach thing is really important. That's how they're regarded, like a vermin. So the Hutu Power Radio DJ, who eventually was 15 years in prison, found it out a couple of weeks ago after a conviction after the event. The DJ would announce that now is the time to kill. So this, as I said before, went on for about 100 days of awful crime. And like I said, the United Nations, whose charter is to stop genocide, it's to protect human rights. The United Nations does effectively nothing, but then I want you to also think, what could it have done? I mentioned before, peacekeeping, not peacemaking, and there was no peace to keep. the massacres are wrong. But the world community did nothing. President of the USA, Clinton, at the time, it's his biggest regret, his standing back and not taking any action. So that's something else which I think is worth considering. And I guess, sadly, and has it changed? The bigger picture is, as people have said, including the head honcho at the United Nations, a guy called later Kofi Annan, and he says, these are African lives and people don't care about Africa. Africa's not on people's radar. Africa is a place, some people couldn't really even name you 5 African countries. Some people even think Africa is one country. It's not, girls. It is a whole lot of countries, 20, 30, 40, I don't know. But lots of them, and with lots of different tribes and dialects and regions and religions and traditions. But it's our white ignorance which has led to Africa kind of being abandoned after the days when the European powers had the colonies and the empires, like the British and the French and the Germans to a lesser extent. And after that had all happened, we just kind of see Africa as this country that bleeds, this continent rather, that bleeds aid and support and money that is thrown at it in charity appeals. We don't give it a chance to sort of look after itself and make a difference. So that's a little bit off topic anyway, but that's where Africa is at the moment. And Rwanda, I guess, is just another genocide that has happened since the World War II genocide of the Jews, and there doesn't seem yet to be any end to these things in sight. I'll do another upload in a few minutes of a little idea of human rights issues which are different from genocide. So I'll be back shortly with another, so have a listen to that, because that human rights video will help support your knowledge and research in the second part of the essay test that you're going to be doing in week 8. All right, so human rights up next.